So if somebody wants to be able to use a quality product, obviously we have the 16 ounce with the water cooler. It is the chemistry that does everything listed. Everything that it states that it lists here, you can pause the video to look at it. It does. It'll have the heat transfer. It'll have the radiator protection. It'll have the component protection. Okay? Now for the easiest pour and go method, we have a product called the premix. All right? It is the exact chemical concentration level with the right neutral purified water. So it has the right blend. It's good for all weather use, 1-to-1 with glycol. And as we said, it can be used with your intercooler or supercharger. Now, if you're in an all-weather situation on your intercooler or supercharger, uh, you have to have a little bit of antifreeze in there so it doesn't freeze. So we're just going to tell you about that. Hello, this is Clayton Balmus, and I'm your teacher today here in our audio classroom with SynMax University here at synmaxperformancelubricants.com. Today, I'm very excited to spend this time with you. We're going to be talking about the coolant system performance and protection presentation. So I hope you enjoy listening to this as much as I very much enjoy sharing this with you today. The following presentation is to provide performance data and summary overview regarding the SynMax water cooler premix products versus the competition. We will have things from two sources in performance. The first was a coolant system data that was taken from a Daytona prototype with a General Motors engine. It was a 10-hour track test done in 2010, and it was about around 525 horsepower. It was an LS race engine, which is very similar to the race engines that are used in the late models today. The other is a private engineering test with an atmospheric climate-controlled chamber, and it was for the lower cooling loop on a supercharger. Now, both of these applications, even though they're different, share the same story. So with the data available and the timing and the atmosphere and everything that we had, we were close. We had two equally prepared cars for about 10 hours of testing. Obviously, it ran cooler and then became warmer as the day went along. The average temperature from late morning and until was about 70 degrees to 80. The water cooler premix was available, and you'll see how it did. What you'll see is a heat transfer improvement, and we were not able to get the telemetry on what we call the delta T, which is the difference from the hot to cold within the radiator, to know the performance difference. The thermostat wasn't pinned open, this vehicle, so it was open, and if we would have had optimum conditions above the 85, we would have seen more heat transfer. So with what we had, it was still a pretty good test and a pretty good show. Now, what happened was every time the car went by, it would grab a telemetry off the vehicle, and it would be recorded. Okay, so that's what every one of these circles is, and then every one of these is a session. So some sessions are longer than the others, and you come in for tires or whatever, and testing temperature. So this was a test, and basically what would happen is the harder it worked, you're going to see what happened. So we have to remember that the sensor for the telemetry on this was not on the radiator or at the thermostat. It was at the cylinder head. Now, for your own vehicle, if you want to know difference, we do have a presentation on how to take simple measurements. So this is from the cylinder head. So what you're going to see here is as the day went along, the sessions went along, it started getting hotter. But on the top, you'll see the blue circles on the right. You'll see how it starts getting warmer. So he was going for like 5 or 6 laps and coming in. All right. And as it started working, the warmer the cylinder head got. Well, is that a bad thing? No. It's called heat transference. It was actually transferring the heat. Then we had the product, which was the red line product, okay? And that would only get to like maybe 190 degrees. The water cooler product was getting close to about 194. So on average, when the car was under load and everything was really working consistently, you'll see in general that it was able to pull about 3 or 4 degrees off the cylinder head. Okay? And so that's a good deal. We want to pull heat off the head. The next presentation, which we're very proud of to share with you here at SynMax University, is a supercharger lower cooling loop test. Okay, and this is actually going to show you what the difference is in the delta T. So we have a production Mustang GT engine, and then we have the supercharger on top of it. But what we're going to be testing is the telemetry, which is in the hot and cold areas of the lower cooling loop or intercooler. Now, we had a private engineering firm that was asked to find a solution for extended road race conditions at driving at a consistent boost level. All right. The reason it was is there was an anomaly that would happen when after you were in a little bit, which we'll show when you use the regular glycol coolant. There was 3 types of temperature tests. It was a 10-time repeatability test, and the information you're going to be shared now is at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Now this is the average of the 10 sessions. Okay. Now we have what's called an Act 2, which is an air charge temperature. It could not be at beyond 180 degrees coming in. All right, so we have to remember, like an engine, you have a radiator that cools the heat transfer from the engine. In an intercooler lower cooling loop, the hot air that goes into the supercharger is cooled through the lower cooling loop into the intercooler so that the water will be maintained and to cool the air, all right, going into the engine. This was in an atmospherically controlled chamber. It just wasn't outside, so it was we were at 120 degrees consistent. You got the car at 85 miles an hour for 20 minutes. Then you dropped it to 65. Increase the dyno load and make sure the supercharger was at 8 psi, and then you go to what was called full V throttle. You just nail it and go. And here is the results of what happened. So in the lower cooling loop test in the climate control chamber at 120 degrees Fahrenheit at full throttle, okay, you're going to see the graphs of what happened, and we're going to go through this a couple times. With the water cooler, what you're going to notice is that the temperature difference, the inlet temperature on average was 163.8 Fahrenheit. The outlet on the lower cooling loop, this is the little radiator, okay, with the air coming in, it averaged an inlet outlet temperature of 34 degrees, okay. There were other products in here. We'll just mention them. It was Redline was the other product that was used, and the SynMax was able to perform about 10 degrees better than the Redline. Okay, we weren't able to show that data, but the national standard that was here was the Prestone. Okay, and with an antifreeze, this shows you the difference of how antifreeze and glycol really doesn't do heat transfer. And you'll notice at about the couple moment mark inside of it, it had a little bit of a blip and an anomaly, and then it would even out. What they were trying to figure out is they couldn't afford that temperature drop. But one of the things you want to see is how the water cooler, as soon as it started working, it just stayed consistent. Isn't that amazing? Now again, here we have the graph that shows the delta T difference between the hot and cold performance. Again, you measure the hot on the left the cold on the right or the top of the bottom, and as the air passes through the center, it does that. Oh, is this magical? What is this? No, it's because it the SynMax water cooler treatment has a heat transfer chemistry inside of it. Plus, it was running purified water, so that it had the ability to maximize all the chemistries that were involved and do that. And this is the result. Okay, so the average result, as I said, was 40 degrees. Here is a bigger picture so that you can see it. The SynMax had the difference between 40 degrees difference. So instead of this being and this was in a 120-degree hot chamber, desert chamber, climate controlled chamber. If you were to do this in your own situations, you would see about a 35 to 40 degree difference in your radiator, in your late model, or whatever. Okay, so if it was coming in at 220, it'd be leaving at, let's say, um, 100 180, okay, or whatever, before it got into the car, and so that's a good thing. All right, here is the summary results. We had the average air inlet temperature at 120 degrees. Now, the inlet coolant temperature on the SynMax was almost 164. The average inlet cooled temperature of the coolant. Now, this is, remember, you have the supercharger, then the intercooler down below, right? So what happened was is that it was able to on the Prestone it was at 160. So that meant the air going past the intercooler, it was able to pull off the intercooler another 3 to 4 degrees off the heat, which meant it cooled the air. All right. Now one of the things in this presentation is that when it cooled the air, they were able to play with the computer a little bit and put more horsepower in. But then after it went into the coolant chamber, all right, your lower cooling loop or your radiator or your heat exchanger, then when the coolant left after the air went past, all right, the temperature in the SynMax was 129. The temperature in the Prestone was 145, 15 degrees hotter. So the delta T difference on the SynMax was an average of 34 degrees, maximum 40. The delta T difference on the glycol with the pure water was about 15 degrees. Now that showed you something there, isn't that great? So as we said, in general, what we were able to show is that we were able to pull about 2 to 5 degrees off the cylinder head, and as we noticed in the documentation, and then in the lower cooling loop, we were to have the delta T performance of 35 to 40 degrees. Now, that meant from the hot to the cold coming through the radiator. We'll say, Clayton, that's not the water radiator, that's the intercooler. A, the theory is the same. B, I guarantee you, if you take those measurements on your street car or your race car, these will be the same. Okay? Same theories apply. So we showed you, this is just another way to say the same thing. We were able to pull the heat off the head and pull the heat off the radiator because of the science chemistry within the water cooler. So that's it. This is our presentation end for our coolant system performance and protection. And so this is Clayton Balmas, and here with SynMax University. I encourage you to look at the other presentations that we have in coolant system and performance, so that you can get a. We're just here to help you think and to do a little better. For technical test and brochure information on how the Aerospace Advantage for Motorsports can work with your race team or commercial requirements, please visit us at synmaxperformancelubricants.com.